Now, what I wanted to do is was just to go through the survey, the mobile strategy survey done by Loïc Taillon in 2013. But I think as we have 40 minutes, I just go through it very quickly because I think it's better than we spend some time and do something all together and share the knowledge, because I think that is one of the most important things in this workshop. What I was going through this survey, first of all, you can find it online. It's very simple and it's very useful, particularly for professionals, because it can give us an idea of the direction in which museums worldwide are going. And there are some very important issues that I got from this research, from this survey. One of these is the most popular objective museums have, according to this survey, which has been done by about 500 museums all over the world, is the reason why the objective of having a mobile tour, which is, while we are used here in Italy that the revenue part is very important, worldwide the revenue part of the income that you can get from a mobile tour is the less important, and the most important are the three most important are all about engagement and experience, because one is engaging visitors through experimentation, which is really interesting because, and this is, I think, the reason that bring away from the revenue part, because when you do experimentation, you cannot think about cost, but you can just think of how to get in touch with visitors. And then to make access to more interpretative content and to provide a more interactive experience. And I think it's very interesting to think about this to develop an experience. And I think it's better that we don't go through this, because it's something that you can read and I can just go and we all together do some job. Another thing that impressed me in this survey is that even if there is a continuous change in the technology, that in the last 5 years it's completely changed from audio guide to smartphone, and we know that now there are about 4,055,000,000 people that has a smartphone, and by the end of this year,
4 billion?
4 billion, yes.
2/3 of the population of the world?
Yes.
Well, there are more smartphones than users.
And 4 billion 55, and by the end of this year, half of them will be smartphone.
We should give them out at the hospital. Kids are born. You get a phone number, you get a phone.
Yes.
And half of them are smartphone. That means that half of them can get access, and they're obviously increasing in the area that are developing now. And even if there has been these changes, and many museums are leaving the rental, the direct rental to people, because they believe a lot in the BIOD, how do you call them? BIOD, bring your own.
Oh, bring your own device. Yes.
I like this. Yes. I like this. The objective has not changed. I mean, even if the technology goes really quickly, the objective of the museums is still telling a story to engage people when they get into the museums, and doing it using what the platform offers, but the objective is still the same. So I think that now we can, instead of going through this that you will find on the internet, I think that the best is to do some work all together to exchange experience.
I might actually also kind of open this up a little bit. Basically, we've got two choices with the rest of our time. We could just do Q&A, but we also brought a little exercise. Okay, well, this is very much, I'll pass it out and you can have a look, and if you all think it sounds boring, just ask questions and we'll throw it away. You can also download this online. But basically the point of this is just to get us thinking about, it's really to address what James said, you know, he doesn't let curators write their exhibit text because they've forgotten what it's like not to know. And this worksheet is really to help get us into a position of not knowing and starting to create interpretive content from that point of view, and think about experiences around there. Maybe find ways to let our visitors start telling the stories. And in fact, this came up, I think it was in the crowdsourcing session yesterday, the importance of collecting even, as it were, inaccurate data from the crowd, from our visitors, that was discovered in the Steve Museum project, which was a social tagging project where people were asked to tag artworks with words that came to mind, give them the metadata search terms. And they found that, of course, sometimes people put up words that might be wrong. So it's a still life, they call it a peach, it's really an orange. Because it helped the interpreters and the curators understand what they needed to explain in the text. Well, similarly, I think we can crowdsource questions about our collections and our exhibitions and the themes that are important to what we're presenting in our museums, so that we make sure that we answer the kind of elephant in the room questions that visitors walk in and have that might not be obvious to us as experts or to our curators as experts, but in a sense, if, you know, I always remember an example a colleague gave me. You know, if you come from a Buddhist tradition and it's your first time in a Western museum that was, you know, is largely formed of post-Christianity artworks, it may not, in fact, be obvious to you who that woman is holding that baby all over the place.
It's demanding. We did this, I sort of interrupt, we did in fact, part of our visible listing when we did our Chinese show, we did a show on the Tang Dynasty. And I did a series of focus groups in Beijing where I gave the pictures of the objects coming from their collections, only Chinese stuff, to the Chinese themselves to respond to what they were. So we had a whole level of labeling in the exhibition through Chinese eyes, because they see a bodhisattva differently than we do.
Right.
But I did, for a publication in Chinese, English, and Italian, I did the flip as well. So I showed them pictures from Uffizi, my Chinese friends, and said, what do you see? And indeed, the kid, who's the nanny?
Right.
That was the question. Who's the nanny?
Exactly. So basically, this is something that I started trying when I was at the American Art Museum at the Smithsonian, which was inviting people to walk around. It was very analog, very low tech, with just a map of a particular area of the museum. And whenever a question popped into their heads, they just write it on the map at the location where the question occurred. So this is very primitive geolocating of user-generated content. And so, you know, we got great questions like in the folk art section, which of that museum, which features a collection of fishing lures. So these are the things that you put on the end of your fishing line to attract the fish to bite your hook. And some of them are incredibly ornate and artistic, created, you know, over the past 2 centuries by fishermen in North America. You know, and the obvious question to our visitors, which I dare say never occurred to our curators, why are these art? Like, what are fishing lures doing in an art museum? And until you answer that question, they can't hear anything else you say, right? So we need to understand the big level, high level, obvious questions and use them as hooks. If we can answer that obvious question quickly, then we can start to propose questions that may not occur to the inexpert visitor to ask. And say, and not only that, but did you also know? So this is this principle of meet them where they are and then take them somewhere new. But you can't take them somewhere new if they don't trust you, because they're still wondering why the hell fishing lures are in your art museum.
Which is why, again, you don't let curators write labels. Because, no, it's true, to be a great curator, to be the person you want the curator to be, to know everything about a subject, they will have forgotten what it was like not to know immediately, without even thinking, so much stuff that nobody else knows and would like to know. So the gap between, because we do it the same way. When you move to a new city, you get a little scared, you get lost. And then after you're there for a while, you know the city. In fact, we work very hard to be smart. Eh? We have to be very careful. Human beings don't like being uncertain. So we work very hard to know things. Once we know, we forgot what it was like not to. When we were scared, going down the highway, saying, well, which way to the center? It's obvious. 2 lefts and a right, you're there. It's not obvious. So you have to go back to where people are.
Absolutely. And then they can start telling us how to tell those stories. And I love that final quote you closed with. So maybe what we'll do is just pass these around. You can have a look. Again, if once you've got this in your hand, it looks dull, you can just shout out a different topic and we'll talk about that. So let me see what we've got here. Are these the two together? Or these are each of the three different ones?
The three different.
Okay. All right, so let's start with this one, I think. All right, so just grab one and then pass them along. Start this back here. And one thing that you can do, this is a little bit of a tight space for it, but if I could have, let's say, 2 or 3 volunteers who have with them an object that you would like to donate to this museum we're establishing here today, which is the Museum of Memorable Objects and Meaningful Objects. Somebody has with them a meaningful object that you'd like to donate to our museum's collection. It does not have to be of great art historical or cultural value. It simply needs to be meaningful to you. Any volunteers? We only need a couple of objects to get us going. Okay, there we go. Thank you. We'll put this, okay, we're going to exhibit it on this beautiful, specially crafted podium. There's one meaningful object. Anybody else have something they want to contribute?
What do we have? I can contribute with this.
Oh, wonderful. Ilaria's big earrings. This is, oh, I see, yeah. Okay. Let's see what we've got here. All right, we'll have two objects. You got something? Great. We have a third object in our museum. Oh, wonderful. Okay. I won't say what it is, because I'm the curator. I'm not allowed to write the texts. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so let's just start off, and again, interrupt me at any point if this kind of gets silly. But we start off by thinking about who's the audience, okay? So in this case, you're the audience. You're the visitor. Now, you don't have to be truthful in this. But imagine yourself as a visitor, either as who you are or someone else, and think about, you don't have to write this down, but have in mind, why are you here? Why did you come today? Did you come because your Aunt Sally's in town and you want to make sure that she sees the best of the city that you're living in? Are you here because you're taking your child? Are you here because you needed to duck out of the office and clear your mind, so you came to the art museum? Are you here because you're a museum professional and you need to visit this museum? Or are you here because you're a hobbyist, you're researching your family's history and you want to go see some objects that are relevant to that? So just think about why you're here. And are you on your own? Did you come with someone else? What is your relationship with those people? These things are profound conditioners of the kind of experience that we're going to have when we come into a museum. And then, again, going back to this idea of the mobile habits of our visitors, what mobile platforms do you already use? Are you an audio tour taker? Are you the sort of person who, first thing you buy the ticket, you look for the audio tour in any museum? Do you use a cell phone? Are you a smartphone user, or are you still stuck with voice calling and text messaging? I shouldn't be so pejorative in my description of them. Do you play video games? Do you download podcasts? Do you use social media? These, again, are all really, really important, right? Because if we think, oh gosh, we'd love to build social media sharing into our mobile app, but we know that Baltimore Museum of Art, less than 9% of the visitors currently are aged under 44?
19.
Under 9%. Okay?
Museum in Baltimore.
In the Museum of Baltimore, where I'm about to start working.
What's the average age of the population?
I don't know. It's a good question.
It'll depend. I'm on the advisory board of the Walters Art Gallery in Baltimore. So the demographics are variable according to which part of town you're in. It's got an aging population, obviously, because people have gone to Washington, work in other places, and they have a larger African American community, which is in fact a much younger demographic.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to deal with both the age demographic and indeed the
Right.
Social, ethnic demographic in Baltimore.
Right. So yeah, if I want to build social media mobile for that audience, I need to think about whom am I targeting, right? So these are the sorts of questions that we start out with. And actually, I kind of skipped the most important thing, which is we need to remember what our mission is. So for the mission for our Museum of Meaningful Things is to enable meaningful conversations and build ad hoc communities and collaborations around personal objects and their stories. So we need to keep that what is the museum here for question in mind as well. And it's been described to me also as a sort of a Venn diagram. So the audience comes with its interests, its needs, its prejudices, its mobile habits, its companions, its context of being there. The museum has its mission, its aims, its objectives, and we're kind of looking for the overlap of those two circles and how can we really create impact there. Okay, so now what you can do, if you've been sitting for too long, is stand up and come visit our Museum of Meaningful Objects here and write down your questions about them. First thing that comes to mind, this is not hard, okay? Don't think too hard. What hits you as you come by and see our Museum of Meaningful Objects, as you're our visitors today? So it'll be a little bit tight, but I think we can manage. Please, come visit.
Which are they?
These are our three objects here. 1, 2, 3, right on the front. Of course, you could, oh, somebody else added something here, it looks like. Okay, we have 4 objects. You might have a hard time knowing what the art is in this museum.
That's right.
Is that art or is that the trash can? Please come by. Please feel free to walk in front. Yeah. Walk in front, have a view. What are the questions of objects? Let's just number them, let's say for ease, from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Objects 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order there. Here, I'll create some simple number labels.
The micro is not part of it, right?
No, that's part of that's the prop.
Okay,
That's part
okay.
of the scenery. We'll just say, for the sake of so here are our number labels that you can use to identify your questions if you have questions about more than one object. Okay, everybody had a good look? Who had a question about object number 1? Just somebody tell me what your question was about object number 1. Yeah.
I had a suspect, so the question would be, what's the function?
What's the function? What does it do? Yeah, okay. What's the
function?
function? What's it used for? Yeah, okay. Great. And our curator of this object is back here, right? So curator, how would you answer that question?
It's a USB stick.
Oh, okay.
So you open it and you put it in your computer and you put your data inside.
Okay. Visitor, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Great. Success. Okay. And curator, would you like to add anything else to that? I mean, is that an interesting answer? And does that help make this object more interesting to you?
It makes me, I guessed correctly, so it makes me happy.
Okay. All right. That's the hook. So you've got him hooked, curator. You've met him where he is. Now can you take him somewhere new? Learn something meaningful about this object in the museum.
That's a present from my sister, and she's always saying, yeah, okay, you are making this computer, so I think the best present is this thing. And I think it's a very nice thing, because at the end it's a way to develop yourself. So we don't think about it that USBs or even smartphones, but it's the basis of our personality. So it's something relevant for us. You have your data, you are your data. So it's something important, and I think it's something relevant, and it's a little object. We normally have one, and we don't think about it. But yeah, it's something more important than this. I don't know.
The importance sort of belies the form. I mean, this isn't a very kind of imposing presence as a physical object, is it, right? But you're saying that the date on it is actually much more important than what this might make it look like. So I'll tell you what I really like about what you've done, and I didn't introduce this at all in my talk, but if you want to find more, there's an article in Curator Journal by Andrew Pekarik and Barbara Mogul on a theory of visitor motivations, understanding what people get out of and are going to museums for, called Ideas, Objects, People, and Physical Experiences. That's not exactly the title, but the theory is kind of called for short IPOP. Ideas, People, Objects, Physical Experiences. And so this is sort of in contrast to, but not contradictory to, the John Falk visitor motivation theory. How many of you have read John Falk's books? Just one? Okay, so he's a museum theorist in the US, and he identified, I kind of was using his theory when I said earlier, think about your audience, why are they coming? Are they coming with a child they want to educate? Are they coming to get away from it all? Are they coming as a professional? These are kinds of visits that he's identified. But the IPOP theory says that that's fine. You might be coming here because you want to recharge your batteries, which probably means, by the way, you're not going to want to take an audio tour unless maybe it's a music tour to help you escape from everything. But beyond that, you might have a subjective kind of structure to your innate desire, which orients you to feel attracted to ideas, to objects, in terms of their aesthetics, to people, particularly their stories, or to physical sensory experiences. And very few people who are attracted by the physical experience tend to come to museums, in fact. They go to other things, sports.
In fact, I'm going to throw in 2 more pieces of research that address precisely that, the most, in my opinion, problematic, not in the sense that it's methodologically unsound, but because it challenges us the most, is a piece of research done in 1977 by Marilyn Hood, who did a study of 250 museums, science centers, natural parks, zoos, and she basically showed that the reasons that people come, the site for coming to museums who come often, i.e. more than 3 times a year, so the frequent visitor, are not only different than, but in fact opposed to the reason given by people who are infrequent visitors. She shows quite definitively that satisfying one group is actually making the place worse for the other one and vice versa. That's the first piece of research, and it's very troubling because it's how do we marry the fact that some people are coming as non-frequent and some people. The second is, of course, George Hines' Learning in the Museum, where he talks about multidimensionality, supported by Christian Heath's research at King's College in London, who showed the ecology of the museum visit by video, where indeed people who come there, there are readers who will, if they're readers, they'll read, and if they're in a group, they'll read the label to their friend. Other people will be toucher. So you have a division of labor within any visiting group that is more rigid than we think. It's not shared. It's not everybody takes a turn. People delegate themselves in a group of visitors to share knowledge. Kids go and do hunter-gatherer things and come back.
Right.
So George Hine, Christian Heath, Marilyn Wood, which is the most disturbing piece of research in that shows that we really are walking a tightrope, because if we do things for one group, particularly those that we know best, because they're like us. We go to museums, we like museums. There are people who actually don't. And either they don't come, in which case that's another challenge, but if they do come, the things that they want to find are radically different and opposed to what we want.
So again, everything starts with knowing your audience. And what we should do, you're making me think, we should put together a bibliography for you all, which we'll put on the MWF website afterwards. Well, what I really find fascinating about the IPOP theory is it doesn't just provide another way of categorizing visitors that kind of goes beyond, your age, your gender, your income, your education level, but it actually theorizes what makes a museum visit memorable. So it says, for example, I'm an ideas person. I've done their personality test. I mean, what I am drawn to is the big ideas. I know this will come as a shock to you all, having heard me talk all morning. But what I will remember from a visit to a museum is not the big ideas that I learned, but will be the things about objects and their aesthetics, or the people's stories, or the physical experiences I had. That is to say, the moments that flipped me from out of my rut, out of what I always do as an ideas person, into a new way of experiencing something. So what I loved about your interpretive content that you provided there was you actually covered the full range, with the possible exception of the physical. Again, museums have a hard time addressing people who learn physically. That's why we have a hard time with little kids. That's how they learn, kinetically, sensorially. But you started out with giving me a people story. Okay, we get the basic thing, it's a USB stick. You told me your sister gave it to you because of how she sees you, and she thought it would be meaningful to you. Beautiful, beautiful story. And then you gave me a big idea. And in fact, you liked it. She was right, because you realize this is in a sense more than the object. It says more about you than just the form of the Homer Simpson USB stick, because it's got all of your data on there. And then you even took it a step further in talking about how that belies the physical form. So you got me to look at the object again. So you gave me an idea, you gave me a story, and you gave me an aesthetic engagement with the object all in one. So in that one interpretive bit of content, you had the potential to flip me wherever I was coming from. So that was kind of neat. Everybody got the idea? You want to do one more? Or how are we doing on time?
We're fine.
Yeah?
I think what time we
Quarter 12?
We have 12. But
12
I will go at 12, I will go.
Quarter to
Okay.
we got 15.
Someone.
Do you want to do one more?
Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to shout out object 2, 3, or 4, just to change things a little bit?
The last one, 4.
Number 4, which is, what is this?
Exactly.
Okay, so was that your question? What is it?
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Okay, who's the curator of this object? Ah, okay, Alex.
Well, we just measure small steps I made during the day.
Oh, it's a pedometer. Okay. All right. So I guess we all went, oh, all right. So our big question's have been answered.
You count your step. You count your step. What's that?
It counts my steps.
Yes.
first of all, interesting to know. Secondly, some days I work too much and I don't walk enough. It just reminds me, wow, you're sitting too long in the office, and kind of game with myself.
Excellent.
Is there an, so you, it's not just curiosity, you have measures for this. You know, oh, I haven't walked enough. How do you know that? How many steps a day do you have to make? Presumably everybody's
The
different.
doctors recommended like 10,000 steps a day.
Really?
Yeah, it's good for your heart. Not like running or jogging or anything, but if you do like 10,000 steps a day, it's good.
See, that I would like to know.
Now you know.
I do far too few steps. What about bicycle? Does it count?
Yeah, it does count, but not straight that device.
It's a great way to get analytical people to care about physical activity. It's to measure.
Yes, it's a very boy thing, that.
Is any of you an engineer who develops pedometers?
Yes.
In our solution, it's part of it.
Okay, all right, what? Anybody here a doctor, physical therapist? Okay.
I'm not a doctor, but there is actually an application for moves that
Okay.
actually does all of this.
Okay, what I'm getting at is that there's not an expert in this room.
No.
But we have just all collectively generated actually a fairly interesting little mini conversation. You took away some useful information. Now, James, poor guy's going to
Gotta count my steps.
He's going to get your app and he's going to start worrying about whether he's walking
Stepping out
10,000
properly.
steps or not. I mean, you've transformed James Bradburne's life, okay? Through a crowdsourced conversation. All right. I actually am really keen. Can we just do number 3 quickly?
Wow.
Does anybody have a question about these?
No.
Go ahead.
Are they heavy, pesanti?
No, no, they're not heavy because they're in resina. So they're very light. They're just big, but not heavy.
Fantastic question. This was the question I had when I saw her wearing them. And more especially because when my daughter, who's 4 and has a thing for bling, saw them, she wanted to wear them. So I'm going, how? And how are they going to, what are they going to do to my poor daughter's little delicate earlobes? And then she put them on and I realized they were clip-on. So, curator, can you take us further and tell us more about
these earrings?
About these earrings, having answered the big question, are they heavy?
Yes, they're not heavy, they're in plastic and they have been designed by the Florentine designer. And I think that I buy all of my jewelry in plastic because it's done by this designer and I love her, so I love going to this shop and just buying them.
Could you tell us the name?
The name of the shop?
The name and the address.
The name and the address of the shop?
Yes, but I'm not getting percentages where. It's Angela Caputi, the designer. It's a Florentine.
And she's on sale at the shop in
Yes.
Palazzo Strozzi.
Yes, the Palazzo
I could
they
ask.
have. Yes.
There we go. Okay, so now we've added retail opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right? And I just want to add another nice story that you told me, which is that every year your husband gives you a gift of jewelry by this designer.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I got from him a big ring when I have 3 kids. When my first kid was born, as he said, I cannot buy you a diamond, so I buy you a false diamond, which is like this. And then some necklace for every anniversary, yes. So I'm linked to this designer.
And my 4-year-old's not the only child who loves this jewelry. So her kids play with the jewelry and they tend to break it, but the designer...
She knows me that my kids break them, yes, because they're in plastic. And each time I go back to the shop, she fixes them without charging me because she's so used that I go with this earring necklace broken by my kids. So, but these are perfect for small child. These are really perfect because they enjoy it. Sometimes if you are busy, you can give this to your kid and she can stay for half an hour.
They're big, so they cannot swallow them.
Yes, you can stay half an hour and you can do your
Beauty of the big
business.
pieces.
So So if they get broken.
That lends itself to an interactive exhibit. So you have the broken bits, can you put this together? There's a lot of interaction in this.
How much will it cost?
And target audience, you know, parents, as I've recently learned, once you become a parent, everything has a dual use. Like, how can I use it? How can my daughter use it? Break it, destroy it. So, okay, so that was just for a bit of fun. But you see the different kinds of approaches, the different kinds of content that can come out. And so then the next thing that you can do, and I realize actually we've got a sheet that lays this out a little bit more easily perhaps, on the second page, is to ask yourself kind of what voice do we want to convey this information? What's the context of use? Are they going to be getting this in the museum, at home, in the classroom? And what kind of platform are they going to be getting it on? So I'm going to pass around this second version of the sheet just because it lays everything out on the front page in kind of a slightly more user-friendly way. Actually, let me grab one of those too, so I'll talk to you all about. Again, we don't need to go through this, but I just list all these categories because I think, again, it's very easy to kind of remain stuck in the object and label-led way of transmitting information and thinking about it as these little nuggets of knowledge. But, you know, we could think about this as with the pedometer, actually as a conversation that happens in a more social media facilitated way, where, you know, maybe their polls, their votes, their quizzes. The one about the earrings, we could include, you know, a link to the shop where you can order your own large earrings. Do we want to do it as what we call vox pop, so go interview people on the street, or do we want to actually interview the designer of the earrings herself? And what platforms we're going to use is going to, again, depend on our target audience. You know, if we're talking about people who frankly don't use smartphones, maybe we don't want to build it as an app. Maybe actually a traditional audio tour device is going to be more accessible for them. So that's the basic gist of that section of the worksheet. And it'd be interesting to revisit this. First of all, the links to download these is on the bottom there, but you can think about the different kinds of content in terms of platform through this kind of grid here, which is certainly debatable. You're going to head off and
yes, because
we're going to meet you for the tour?
There are people that maybe are coming just for the tour.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to. You can bring my earring.
I will bring your earring. Actually, you can probably take them now. Are we all done with the? Thank you so much. So we should probably wrap up. But that was just
mobile museum.
Cool. Yes. Museum of meaningful objects.
In front of the cathedral.
In front of the cathedral. We'll see you there in 5 minutes.
She's our guide.
Fantastic. Thank you. See you later. And also, just to end, I'll pass this around as a kind of, again, a different way of configuring some of these questions in terms of mobile strategic planning and thinking about, you know, objectives and who's the team and who's going to be doing this. Again, there's more information online at the links that I provided on here, so this is just kind of takeaways. Let me shut up and ask if James has anything he wants to add to this and if you all have any questions.
I think we'll pass to if you all have any questions, because I don't have a lot to add. I think I'm always delighted being on the same platform with Nancy, which covers most of the same things I do, in a different way, of course, much more charming way. And unfortunately, if you're staying until the 8th of March, come see the Pontormo show. Really, it is one of those life-changing shows. It's going to be extraordinary if art is your thing. Otherwise, come by the Palazzo anytime except now, because we're installing the show, so it's just going to be a construction site. There's a great cafe, a good shop, but not a lot to see, alas. But as of the 12th of March, we will be open with a show on the family in the Strozzi. We'll be showing the Pontormo Rosso upstairs. And all the things I've been saying, actually, you will see expressed in various ways, because we work together as a team to make sure that some of these ideas actually you can explore. Questions for you guys?
Any questions or comments? Yeah, please.
Yeah, so we talked about the fact that museums and institutions is still existing very hardly this kind of so how do you really estimate the possibility? And how can could be convinced these directors?
Well,
all questions end up being, in our worlds, by the way, become political questions, in the sense that what we want is to make change, and what are the obstacles to making change, whether you're working as a subcontractor, whether you're working in an institution. And it's a very difficult question, which is why perhaps my observations about time also tell you that it's very difficult to make change, and change happens very slowly and non-uniformly. Certainly all of us, if we're convinced, become vehicles for change. I've been invited to give staff seminars at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, at the MoMA. I'm going to Amsterdam to speak at Codart, which is the curators of old masters. I mean, we're talking about, and I was surprised to have been invited because I'm usually seen as the barbarian who doesn't like curators, which of course I love curators, but I like it when they do what they do well. So we can each of us create change. The second way is to try to propose, and ourselves not allow ourselves to be self-centered. Because the worst thing is when we start blocking ourselves. Say, oh no, we can't do that. Oh, they'll never accept that. Oh, no, just give them an audio tour. I mean, I think though our worst enemies are first ourselves. First we stop being our own enemies. Then we try to convince, and we find compelling arguments, whether they're in the form of data. And arguments are like visitors. Some people want numbers, some people want revenue, some people want philosophy, some people want a pragmatic example. Somebody else who's more important does it too, so don't be afraid. Find the right argument for the right people you're dealing with. That could be your superior, it could be your client, it could be your institution. And finally, if you can, I mean, one thing I have to say in my own life is the only reason I direct an institution now is not because I've ever had any ambitions to direct things, but what I found in my life is to make the thing, make the changes you want, you have to somehow be in a position to make those changes. I hope Benedetta would agree, I think my team would agree, that it's a lot easier to do experiments in a museum where the director likes experiments than when you don't have one. So it means some of you will have to sacrifice yourselves and do the awful work of being a director, administration, politics, fundraising, which is not what makes me happy, in order to protect and to support the innovators, the people, and let them, and to say yes more than say no. I've tried to create change from the inside of organizations at different levels. All of us have probably run up against obstacles. The only secret I've ever found is be the director, and even then you have people who, like boards, who are saying you can't do this, you can't do that. Find the right level, do the best, and create change, and don't censor yourself. Stay open to change yourself. Other advice I can't give.
That's fantastic. I'm really interested, actually, that you kind of echoed again something that came up in our mobile parade last night, which is if what we should be doing with mobile and as museums in general is storytelling, how can we break down the barriers to the transmission of those stories, most of which we erect ourselves, and by we I mean museum workers, you know, either because we say, oh, we can't possibly put Wi-Fi in the gallery, or we can't possibly use crowdsourcing, or we can't possibly trust social media. How do we break down those barriers?
But the first thing I want to also pick up on something you said, which I'm going to come back to, is let's also remember that storytelling is not always top-down. Storytelling is only one mode of communicating in a museum. We can invite people to be participants, we can ask them to be observers, we can ask them to be players of a game. Storytelling is not the only mode we can use in a museum, and when we storytell, we either have to take responsibility, i.e. attribute our own stories. This is a curator who has a PhD from Amsterdam telling a story that they know something about, but some other curator might not agree with them. And then we also have to let visitors then tell their own stories. Remember, storytelling doesn't mean we always have to tell our stories in our way.
Right.
And remember that storytelling is only one way we can create meaning in museums. Anyway.
That's a great actually kind of end to this whole Museums in the Web Florence edition, which was about storytelling, connected culture, and open cities. It doesn't stop there. So we hope you'll be able to join us again, and now we should go to the tour.
Thank you, everybody.